Hey guys, Angelo Esquivel here, back with another review, and today I'm going to be reviewing the Kensun Xenon HID headlight conversion kit to convert your halogen headlights into HIDs. Now, if you have been following my YouTube channel for any amount of time, you'll know that recently I have been testing numerous amounts of LED light conversion kits for your headlights. And unfortunately, every single LED style that I have tried has not worked. They have all had problems. So I'm stepping back one step in technology to something that, for whatever reason, seems to work a lot better. And I'm going to give it a shot. I've never installed HIDs in my car, but, well, we're going to try them out today. So, let's give this thing an open up. We have these things called ballasts, and these are essentially equivalent to what we would consider the controller in an LED to be. So these are required if your car does not naturally have HIDs. They maintain a certain amount of electricity in a certain manner to ensure that the lights don't go out. Now there are a lot of wires here, and these would be the HIDs themselves, and they come encased in a plastic housing to ensure they don't get damaged. And there's a lot of different connections, but that's okay because everything connects to something. And the ballasts, let's try and get a ballast out here. Alright, this would be the ballast for the Xenon, and we are running 35 watt HIDs. Now, there's a distinction between 35 watt and, I believe, 55 watt. A lot of people say 55 watt HIDs are extremely bright, and those are the kind of lights that, when you're going into oncoming traffic, tend to blind people just on low beams. HIDs are much more efficient than halogen bulbs, so they can burn a lot brighter with less electricity. Now, there have been reports of people melting their headlight assemblies with HIDs, but here's the thing. HIDs are more efficient, so less power is wasted in heat. The reason why some headlights start to melt is because of the way they're installed. And here's the thing. If you're in a reflector unit, the HID bulbs may be too long and get too close to the reflectors. And if it gets too close, that's what causes everything to melt, is proximity to the reflectors. So we're going to be super careful about this, and I'm going to try to avoid that situation. But theoretically, these should burn these should burn with less heat, and they should be more efficient than halogens. So let's go ahead and kind of put all the wires together here real quick, because there are a lot of them. And kind of look at the final product of a single set, and we'll go over that in just a minute. Now, as I always say with 9007 socket bulbs, they're notoriously incompatible with a lot of aftermarket parts because of the complexity of the design. One of the issues being the circular retainer lock that has to go on. Now, with an LED, there'd be a heatsink that gets in the way, and it'd be a problem to be able to get this on, but thankfully, with an HID, that's not the case. See, we're able to just put the wires through the hole, and we're able to get the circular retainer lock right where it needs to be. And now we can connect the rest of these wires up to the ballast. Alright, so everything just kind of goes together the way you would imagine it would. If it looks like it goes there, it probably does in this case with this unit. It's very simple. The ballast has a few connections, and there's multiple connections in this situation compared to some other bulbs, because 9007s, this particular set, has to run the high and low beam in the same bulb. That's just how this design has to work for my car. So that's why there's a lot of wires, but as you can see, it's not all that bad. In the end, what you end up getting is simply the 9007 socket that you will plug into your factory wiring harness, and the HID bulb that will go in place of the halogen. Alright, so now that we've seen everything set up the way it is, let's actually talk about the specifications of the unit. Now, as we said before, this is running on the 9007 socket. And the color temperature for this particular bulb that I chose was 6,000 Kelvin. You can choose a huge spectrum of colors, but remember that certain colors in many states are reserved for certain things. For instance, blue lights are reserved for law enforcement vehicles only, and it would be illegal for you to be running them in your car if you went with that particular color, and you might get pulled over and get a ticket for it. So each bulb pulls 35 watts for a total of 70 watts, and it doesn't say how many hours these bulbs are expected to run, and it doesn't say much about a warranty either. But maybe if I can find that information, I'll put it in the description of the video. But essentially now all we have to do is plug it up to the vehicle and see how well it runs. Okay, so since we're going to be installing these, and I would imagine they're like halogens in the sense that you don't want to touch the bulb with your hand, I'm wearing some disposable latex gloves, so that way the oils from my hands, if I do accidentally touch the bulb, doesn't actually touch the bulb. So just a thin layer of protection just to be safe. So I'm all gloved up. All the connections are ready to be made, so let's go try this stuff out. So now we're here at my 2003 Mitsubishi Outlander LS, and right there is where we're going to have to plug in the light bulb. So because there's a lot of harnesses and stuff, I'm going to pause the video and we'll come right back to it after it's all inside. Alright, so this is what it looks like when everything's installed. The connection just goes into the factory wiring harness, and we got the ballast right here. Now it does come with equipment to mount the ballast somewhere more permanent once everything is functional and you've confirmed everything works. So we just got to do this to the other side, and we'll be able to see just how bright these things are. Alright, so we've come into our first snag in the installation. I'm putting in this bulb. This wire right here came out of the little socket. We're going to try and get that wire back in. Shouldn't be hard. Alright, I got the wire back in, and we'll just have to hope it stays in. If you're wondering how to get them out with these things, you push the pin down and then it should pop out. So now we're going to have to install it again. Okay, so this is the kind of beam pattern we get with the low beams. And one thing to remember about HIDs is, unlike LEDs, there is a warm-up time, which means it takes them a few seconds to get to the maximum brightness that they can get to. So, with this being low beams, we're going to switch over to high beams. Notice a different color. It's actually very white in real life. The camera's thinking it's blue. And the light will actually get incrementally brighter for the next 10 to 15 seconds. So these are not dual Xenons. The Xenons would be the high beams, and the low beams are more or less like standard halogens. So now that we have this figured out, we're going to go ahead and drive around. But one thing I do want to note is there is some confusion with my car. My car does seem to think, well, it did at first, that the low beams were the low beams and the high beams are the high beams. Now it's backwards. It thinks the high beams are the low beams and the low beams are the high beams. I'm not exactly sure what's going on with that. We're going to try and figure that out. Maybe there's something with the ballast. But let's actually see what it looks like on the road. Okay, so once again, we are on the same road that I always test all my light bulbs on. In the same car I always test all the light bulbs in. So, we have nothing but a few street lights to illuminate the road here and there. But essentially this is a pretty dark area. So, these are the low beams, and once again, the car is confused. I'm not sure why. The car thinks these are high beams, but we got a car passing me up here. As you can see, the usable distance is moderate. So they're about as good as, you know, standard low-end halogens. Now, I'm going to go ahead and try and turn on the HIDs as soon as this car passes me up into high beams, and this is high beams, and as you can see, it's getting brighter and brighter. It takes a few seconds to warm up all the way, and the color temperature actually changes as it warms up. Alright, so now we're at about maximum brightness. Let's go ahead and drive down the road, down our normal path. Now, I will note that there is some scattered beams and some patchiness with these. And unlike a halogen, with the two filaments being right next to each other, there are two very separate types of some sort of filament, I guess you would say. And they're different sizes, and they obviously do different things, because obviously one looks like a halogen light and the other looks like, well, an HID. So, the throw distance, it's a little disappointing, actually. It doesn't seem to go all that far. Now, remember, I always compare lights to the Sylvania Silver Stars, because those are the lights that I generally use in my car, and those have always served me really well. But right now we're about to come up to an area that is completely dark, has no assisted lights whatsoever on the road. This is where I always test the bulbs to make sure they work properly. And just this big stretch. Okay, so let's kind of take a gander here. So this is high beams. Let's go back to low beams for a second. The low beams, in my opinion, are incredibly dim. Like, to the point where I would definitely not use it on a road with no lights. It's, as you can see on the camera, it's barely bright at all, and I'm going to sit here for a few seconds and see if these need to warm up for any reason. I don't see it changing much. Now, let's switch back over to the high beams. Remember, these take time to get bright. So they're about reaching maximum brightness. And the usable distance, I would say, is about maybe 35-40 feet. And it's kind of an X pattern that we got going on. The left light is beaming really far down to the left, and the right light is beaming towards the right, making an X shape in the road. I don't know if you can see it or not, but for safety reasons, we're just going to continue driving with the high beams on. And we'll see how things go. Now remember, this is a 35 watt ballast, not a 55 watt. A lot of people say the 55 watt is overpowering. I would say this is really underwhelming, actually. I mean, granted, yes, this is a kind of plug and play kit. So if you want really, really good HIDs, which there are good HIDs, I've seen them. People sometimes get them completely custom made. I've got a friend who has completely custom made HIDs and custom reflector housing for them and everything, and they are insanely good. So I can't really see much here, so I'm going to go ahead and turn the Xenon HIDs back on. And I don't want to blind the people in front of me, just in case maybe the angle is weird. And I'm going to turn down the road. I always turn down, back on. And I'm going to be switching back and forth between the two. This is low beams, high beams, because these are LEDs, I can't just switch back and forth constantly. Low beams. And the low beams are like that maybe 3000 Kelvin mark in terms of color temperature. High beams. It's really interesting how the high beams take time to warm up. These are my first HID kits, so it's a little strange to me. So, we are back where we need to be, and we're going to turn around, and I'm going to give my kind of final thoughts on these. You know, for a set of HID kits, these are just every bit as easy to install as modern LED kits. And that's nice. But it is a little disappointing. I wish the beams were a little better. I wish it threw down the road really well. I wish it did as good as halogens, honestly. Every time I try something that's aftermarket and plug and play, I find that it simply doesn't work nearly as good as something that's actually designed for the purpose. In the end, a light housing designed for halogens is typically going to do best with halogens in it. A light housing designed for HIDs are going to do best with HIDs in it. And a light housing designed for LEDs is going to do best with LEDs in it. If you switch and try and make something conform to a housing that it wasn't designed for, we typically see that they don't work well. And this is another great example of things that just don't work well in something that they're not designed to be used in. And unfortunately, these are not any better than the low-end and mid-tier LEDs that I've tried. And I hate to say it, but the Sylvania Silver Stars still outperform these HIDs in every single LED before it. The Sylvania Silver Stars pump out about maybe 1500 lumens. I've tried LEDs that claim to be 12,000 lumens. But the fact of the matter is, there's no independent verification of any of these lights to confirm their actual brightness, nor do most of these bulbs conform to DOT certifications, DOT being Department of Transportation, meaning they may be illegal to be running in your vehicle. So you have to be very careful and understand the laws and where you are. That being said, would I recommend this kit? I can't say that I would. This is a really inexpensive HID kit. It was only about $60, $65 around that price point. So you honestly can't expect something really nice for that price. It's a single Xenon kit. Dual Xeons, I believe, would be low and high beam would be HIDs. Because like I keep saying, the low beams really do look like as if they are halogens. So with that being said, thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, show your friends, check out my other videos. I got plenty of them, and as always, I will see you next time.